You are listening to PR Radio Station of America.
The year was 1967. America was in turmoil. The Vietnam War dominated headlines. Civil rights protests filled the streets. And in Michigan, a 20-year-old named William Hunt was standing in a courtroom that would decide his fate. He was accused of first-degree murder, a charge that carried the heaviest penalty possible. Hunt insisted he was innocent, but the system moved swiftly. The trial was short, the evidence questionable, and the verdict harsh. Within weeks, a jury declared him guilty. The sentence was life behind bars. For Hunt, the words life in prison felt like a death sentence. At 20 years old, he had barely begun to build a life. He had dreams of family, work, and freedom, but all of it ended the moment the gavel struck. Guards led him out of the courtroom in chains. His mother cried as he was escorted away, while he shouted his innocence to anyone who would listen. In that moment, William believed he would never again walk free. Advocates would later claim that William had been convicted for a crime he did not commit. They argued that the true culprit was his brother, but William was the one who shouldered the punishment. Whether through fear, convenience, or bias, the system closed its eyes to the truth. That mistake would cost William not just years, but nearly his entire lifetime. Inside prison, he replayed the trial in his mind over and over. He thought about what he could have said differently, whether anyone would believe him if he kept fighting. But the machine of justice had spoken, and its judgment was merciless. When William first arrived at prison, he was warned outright by guards. "We are going to break you," they told him. For a young man barely out of his teens, it was a terrifying threat. Prison in the late 1960s was brutal. Violence was common, resources were scarce, and survival meant hardening yourself to conditions that crushed weaker men. William quickly understood that he had two choices: give up and let the system consume him, or stand tall and cling to his dignity no matter what. He chose the latter. He vowed that no matter how long he was locked away, they would never take his spirit. Thus began a journey that would stretch for nearly 6 decades. Outside the prison walls, America was changing at a dizzying pace. The moon landing, Watergate, the end of the Cold War, the rise of the internet. William saw them all not through direct experience, but through television screens and faded newspaper clippings. Inside, he marked time not by seasons, but by transfers, cellmates, and the endless clanging of iron doors. He aged behind bars, yet he held on to one truth. He was innocent, and someday, somehow, the world would recognize it. At just 20 years old, William Hunt entered prison a young man. He would leave it an old man, but never broken. When William Hunt first entered prison in 1967, he was barely more than a teenager. Everything about the environment was designed to strip away hope. Guards repeated their promise to break him, and older inmates tested the new arrival. Violence was everywhere. Food was scarce and often spoiled. Privacy did not exist. For a young man who maintained his innocence, it was a living nightmare. Yet Hunt refused to surrender. Instead of lashing out or collapsing under pressure, he carried himself with quiet dignity. This choice marked him from the beginning. The years blurred into each other. 10 years became 20, then 30. Hunt watched men come and go, some serving short sentences, others never returning from violent encounters inside. Prison aged people in ways that time alone could not. Many gave up, retreating into bitterness or despair. Hunt admitted that time was his greatest enemy. Every morning, he woke up to the same concrete walls and steel bars. Every night, he lay down knowing that outside, families were gathering for dinners, children were growing into adults, and life was moving forward without him. One of the cruelest blows came 15 years ago, when Hunt's own brother died within the prison system. Advocates later insisted that this was the same brother who had committed the crime for which William was serving time. The death was devastating. Not only had Hunt lost a family member, but he was still locked away for something he maintained he had not done. That loss crystallized the brokenness of the system for him. He carried the grief silently, refusing to let it destroy him, but it deepened the lines of resilience etched into his face. As the decades passed, William grew into a role he never expected. To younger inmates, he became a father figure. Men who arrived broken, addicted, or angry found in him a steady presence. He spoke with calm authority, telling them not to give up on themselves, reminding them that even in confinement, dignity mattered. His consistency earned him respect. Other prisoners listened when he talked, not because he demanded it, but because he lived it. Guards who once tried to break him now acknowledged his influence. By the time 60 years had passed, Hunt was 80 years old. Nearly 3/4 of his life had been spent behind bars. The world outside had transformed beyond recognition. Cell phones, the internet, entire generations of culture had passed him by. Yet the man himself had not been broken. He had endured, carrying his innocence like a shield, refusing to allow bitterness to define him. He once said, "They tried to break me, but they never did and they never will." For fellow inmates, that statement was not just bravado. It was truth. William Hunt's strength had become legendary inside the walls of Michigan's prisons. He had survived the slow, crushing weight of time, and that endurance would soon set the stage for his release. By the time William Hunt had spent more than 50 years behind bars, he believed freedom might never come. But the world outside was beginning to change. The justice reform movement was gaining strength. Advocates, lawyers, and former prisoners were shining light on stories of wrongful convictions and excessive sentences. William's name began appearing in conversations among activists who saw his case as a glaring example of injustice. The whispers of support soon grew into a campaign. One of the most important voices to join William's cause was Michael Thompson. Thompson had spent years in prison himself, serving time for a nonviolent marijuana offense. He knew firsthand how unforgiving and unbalanced the system could be. During his own incarceration, he had met William Hunt. He remembered Hunt's quiet strength, his refusal to give up, and his insistence that he was innocent. After his release, Thompson founded the Michael Thompson Clemency Project, an organization dedicated to helping people like William who had been failed by the system. Thompson and his team began gathering evidence, testimonies, and public support. They argued that William Hunt had been convicted not for his own crime, but for the actions of his brother. They pointed out that William had spent 60 years locked away, even after his brother had died in custody 15 years earlier. The injustice was staggering. "This is why the system is broken," Thompson declared in speeches, interviews, and online videos. He made William's case personal, reminding people that an innocent man had spent a lifetime behind bars. The Clemency Project pushed William's case into the spotlight. Social media campaigns spread his story beyond Michigan. Local news began covering the injustice. Advocates shared clips of William's resilience, describing him as a father figure to many inside prison. They emphasized not only his innocence, but his leadership. He was not a danger to society. He was a mentor, a guide, someone who could contribute if given the chance. The narrative shifted from a forgotten prisoner to a man who deserved to be free. As public support grew, pressure landed on Michigan's leaders. Governor Gretchen Whitmer received letters, petitions, and calls urging her to act. The Clemency Project's directors, Mike McCurdy and Marshall Clabos, joined Thompson in pushing relentlessly for a commutation. They described William as an extraordinary figure who had maintained his innocence for 6 decades, something they called beyond comprehension. For the first time in 60 years, William Hunt had reason to believe that justice might finally be within reach. The spark of hope, once nearly extinguished, was now burning brighter than ever. For years, William Hunt had adjusted to disappointment. He had learned not to hope too much because hope could be dangerous inside prison walls. But this time was different. His name was now on the governor's desk. The Clemency Project had built a powerful case, and for the first time in 6 decades, there was a possibility that someone in power might finally listen. His fellow inmates watched with quiet anticipation. Some told him that if anyone deserved freedom, it was him. Still, William braced himself for the worst. Hope was fragile, but it flickered. In July, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer announced her decision. She had signed a commutation order for William Hunt's life sentence. After nearly 60 years, the prison gates would no longer be permanent. The news spread quickly, first through advocates and then into the prison system itself. Michael Thompson, the man who had once shared a cell block with William, posted a video celebrating the decision. In it, he thanked the governor and spoke with visible relief. "This is why I fight," Thompson said. "This is proof that we can fix what is broken." It took weeks for the paperwork to clear, but then the day finally came. On a Tuesday morning, William Hunt walked out of the Ernest C. Brooks Correctional Facility. He was 80 years old, dressed in simple clothes, carrying only a few belongings. Outside the gates, his family waited, arms open, tears falling. They had dreamed of this moment for decades. Some had grown old waiting for him. Some had passed away before ever seeing him free. But those who were there embraced him as if time itself could be rewound by love. Reporters crowded close, their microphones outstretched. William spoke calmly, his voice steady despite the swirl of emotions around him. He told them that when he first entered prison in 1967, guards had been ordered to break him. He paused, lifted his head, and declared, "They never did. They never will." In that single statement, 60 years of resilience came alive. He also shared his promise. If he ever walked free, he would dedicate his life to guiding young people away from gangs and street violence. "I got that chance now," he said, "and I still have that mindset." For those gathered, his release was not just personal. It was symbolic. Advocates hugged one another, grateful to see their efforts bear fruit. Michael Thompson called it one of the proudest moments of his life. Families watching on the news saw more than an old man leaving prison. They saw proof that perseverance and advocacy could overcome even decades of injustice. William Hunt's freedom was not the end of his story. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one defined not by prison walls, but by purpose. The air felt different. After 60 years of breathing recycled prison air, William Hunt stepped into the world with sunlight on his face and no bars in sight. He looked around at cars, smartphones, and a society that barely resembled the one he had left in 1967. The world had changed beyond recognition, yet one truth grounded him. He was finally free. His family surrounded him, hugging him, laughing and crying at once. For a man who had prepared to die in prison, every breath now carried the taste of a miracle. Reporters asked him what he would do now. William did not hesitate. "I said if I ever got out, I'd talk to kids, keep them off the streets, keep them out of gangs. And I mean that." His words were not just a promise, but a mission born of 6 decades of stolen life. He knew better than anyone how quickly a choice could cost everything. He wanted to use his voice, his story, and his pain to guide others before it was too late. To him, freedom was not only about himself. It was about giving back. Inside prison, William had already been a father figure to younger men who had lost their way. Now, he planned to extend that mentorship into the community. Advocates from the Michael Thompson Clemency Project pledged to support his efforts, connecting him with youth organizations, schools, and families in need of guidance. They believed William's story carried the kind of weight that no textbook or lecture could provide. He was living proof of resilience. He was the embodiment of what injustice looked like and how dignity could survive even the harshest circumstances. William's release also reignited conversations about reforming the justice system. His 6 decades of imprisonment highlighted failures that could not be ignored. Wrongful convictions, excessive sentencing, and systemic indifference had nearly erased his life. Yet by walking free, William became a face for change. Advocates pointed to him as evidence that the system needed repair. For people who had lost faith, his resilience inspired hope. His story became larger than himself, touching communities across Michigan and beyond. As the first days of freedom passed, William adjusted slowly. He marveled at simple things: riding in a car without shackles, eating a meal at a table surrounded by family, feeling grass beneath his shoes. Each moment reminded him that life, even at 80 years old, could still hold beauty. He was not bitter. He was not broken. He was determined. For William Hunt, freedom after 60 years was not the end of a tragic story, but the beginning of a new one. He would spend the rest of his days using his voice to protect young people from the path that had stolen so much from him. His name, once tied to a wrongful conviction, now carried a new meaning: resilience, strength, and a refusal to ever let the system take his spirit. This is the end of that story. Now tell me in the comments, what's your most unbelievable story? I'll read out the funniest ones in the next video. Do not forget to hit a like button and subscribe. See you.